All right, today we're diving into something really fascinating and honestly pretty complex: Pakistan's counterterrorism narrative. But this isn't just about press releases. It's really a story about what's being said, and maybe more importantly, what isn't. And that gap? Well, that's where things get incredibly interesting. And that leads us right to this central, kind of paradoxical question that's going to frame this whole explainer. Why would a country hide its own success? I mean, think about it. If you're winning, shouldn't you be shouting it from the rooftops? Well, it's not that simple. And the answer, it points to a much deeper game being played.
Okay, so let's get one thing straight right from the get-go. This isn't going to be a deep dive into spreadsheets and a bunch of raw data. The real story here, the thing we really need to unpack, is about something way more valuable and honestly way more fragile. It's all about credibility. At the end of the day, how much does the world actually believe what you're saying? So to really get a handle on the critique here, we've got to look at how it's all set up. See, the analysis we're pulling from doesn't just jump in with criticism. No, it starts with praise. And you have to understand, that's not an accident. It is absolutely a deliberate tactic.
And this is where we get to this really interesting concept called credibility buffering. It's a classic move, really. You start by saying all the nice things, acknowledging the positives. You might even quote someone like Donald Trump or a top US general. Why? To build a buffer, a foundation of agreement before you get to the hard stuff.
So, and this is the key takeaway, right? This is not just empty praise, it's a strategic play. By getting that external validation on the record, by showing you're aligned with big international players, you basically buy your ticket. You earn the permission to turn around and deliver a much, much tougher critique. It's all about getting the audience on your side before you drop the bombshell. All right, so the stage is set. Now we get to the heart of it all. We're making that pivot to the central tension of this whole thing, this huge gap between what looks like strength on the surface and what could be a really serious hidden fragility. And hey, let's be fair. The strengths are absolutely real. We're talking about decades of tough, hard-won experience here, a seriously deep operational capacity, and a proven track record when it comes to those direct, kinetic operations. On paper, this all looks incredibly impressive. But then comes the but. And it's a big one. This quote right here, it changes the whole game. It basically says, all those wins on the battlefield, all that tactical genius, it's all built on a house of cards if you can't back it up with transparent, verifiable proof. It's not strength, it's fragility.
And here's the real-world consequence of that. Look, in today's hyper-connected world, unverified claims just don't have any value. They don't have currency. Think of it like this. Your experience, your success, it just doesn't travel. It gets stopped at the border because nobody else can prove it's real. Which brings us to probably the most serious charge in this entire analysis. This information gap, this data void we're talking about, it isn't just an accident. It's not some bureaucratic oversight. The argument is that it's a deliberate, strategic choice. And there it is. I mean, this sentence is just, it's a bombshell. The idea that a country with all this experience in counterterrorism doesn't have one single official verifiable database. Wow. What does that tell you? It suggests the goal isn't to create better policy with good data. The goal is to control the narrative. And when that's your goal, well, facts can get in the way. Okay, so this table really breaks down what that looks like on the ground. You've got an official body like NACTA. And sure, they'll give you a list of banned groups. But ask for the verifiable data, the methodology, crickets. Then you've got the ISPR, the military's press wing. They give regular briefings, for sure, but independent verification, context, nope. You see what's happening? They're giving you the appearance of transparency, but not the actual substance. And that is a huge difference. So you might be asking, if there's no official database, where on earth do people get their information? I mean, how do you even begin to understand what's really happening? Well, the answer, it's pretty unbelievable. Yeah, you read that right. Let that just sink in for a second. With no official state data to work with, analysts sometimes have to rely on statements from the terrorist organizations themselves. They're forced to use propaganda from the very groups the state is fighting just to get a baseline. And the implications of this are just, they're a disaster. It means the militants get to help write the story. They get to frame reality. Their exaggerated claims, they become harder to disprove because there's no official trusted data to push back with. The state essentially hands over control of the narrative by default. So this obsession with controlling the story, with creating this information vacuum,
It's not a free move. It comes with a really high price tag, a cost that's paid both at home and on the world stage.
You know, nature abhors a vacuum, and so does information. When the government goes silent, someone else is going to step up and talk. In this case, it's private research groups, think tanks. They step in to fill that void, and while they're doing important work, it creates a whole new set of problems. And look, the data they're putting out is pretty alarming. You see these numbers from the POC Institute for Peace Studies, a big jump in attacks, a big jump in deaths. But step back for a second and think about what this really means. The most critical data about national security isn't coming from the government. It's coming from a private organization. That's a huge deal. The state has lost the reins. And this quote just nails it. It's a massive loss of control. I mean, if you can't be the go-to source for the truth about your own security, you've lost something fundamental. You've lost what's called informational sovereignty. You're no longer the authority on your own story. And this has very real international consequences. Take the FAT, the global watchdog for terror financing. The whole reason Pakistan was on their gray list for so long wasn't necessarily because the world thought they were doing nothing. It was because their claims of doing something couldn't be proven. The just trust us approach, that doesn't fly anymore.
Okay, so let's start pulling all of this together. What we're left with is this massive paradox at the heart of the whole strategy. You've got this strange situation where you can be winning in one area and failing spectacularly in another at the very same time. And this chart really shows you the two sides of that coin. On the one hand, you have kinetic success. The military operations, they're working, they're taking out a lot of terrorists. But look at the other side, the non-kinetic stuff, the data, the civilian trust, the basic institutional plumbing, it's completely collapsing. One side is strong, the other is crumbling.
And that brings us to the final, unavoidable conclusion. In today's world, fighting terrorism isn't just about guns and battles. It's about information. It's about transparency. It's about trust. And if you win all the firefights but lose all your credibility in the process, well, that's not victory. That is, quite simply, defeat by another name.